Hi dear friends, let me introduce you for today while I'm setting up the camera what we're going to talk about today, because I come across this issue all the time and I get quite a lot of questions about these kind of topics, namely the similarities maybe, or the relationship between the use of mushrooms and meditation, especially because, of course, as you know, I practice quite a lot of Daoist meditation, and as a result of that I do know quite a lot about the process of meditation. And the process of meditation is in all circumstances something that is very similar to going through a particular kind of trip, and this particular kind of trip is something that is quite important to the process of nice. Let me see if I can change the color a bit. This is nicer, this is nicer, or this is nicer. What do you think? Blue for a change is nice, right? Trippy. Okay. So, when you look at things from a particular kind of perspective, yes, there are similarities between the two. There's differences between the two. And these differences and these similarities, they all match up to something. To understand the specifics from the differences and the similarities, I think is a very important part of learning in both Taoism, meditation, healthcare, and so forth and so forth. People very often romanticize things, and in this video we're going to a little bit de-romanticize things and make it a little bit technical. Let me start with a question. Have you got experience with meditation and or mushrooms? If you have experience with either one of the two, or you don't have experience with one of the two, this video that I'm going to offer you today is going to be quite interesting. There are many people nowadays that are taking mushrooms, and there are also many people who are actually practicing meditation. And I do know that some people combine the two. And I got a lot of questions about meditation, and I got a lot of questions about mushrooms, because many people know that I have some experience with both, not only with mushrooms. Although it is already a long time ago that I last used it, the experiences of course always stay fresh in your mind, because they are pretty much mind altering and can be very helpful. We're going to talk about these kind of things, but also we're going to talk about the disadvantages, the risks, and we're going to talk about how that relates to what you do in meditation. When I look at the process of meditation, and if I look at different kind of hallucinogenic vehicles, I have experience with both in a reasonable range. The fact that I have done all these kind of things and all the research that I did in all kinds of things that relate to that, cultural research, scientific research, medical research, all these kind of things, they give me a particular kind of perspective. I also have treated over time many people came to me with questions when they had drug-related problems or when they had mushroom-related problems. And as a result of that, I've always kept myself upfront about these kind of things to see both the beneficial perspectives and the counterproductive perspectives. And this is basically like what's better video. To be short on front, in case you are only superficially interested, when you want to have a quick feeling, mushrooms is of course the easiest thing. We'll get back to that later also. Because you take mushrooms, you get an effect, and then something happens to you afterwards or not. With meditation it's different. It takes a long time, it takes proper instruction, it takes discipline, and it takes a lot of honesty, and as a result of that you're going to have hallucinogenic effects, and these have to be trained also into the right direction to get the particular kind of effects that you want for. Both are, because of their nature, knowledge-based epistems, you can say. So they are experiences that require a knowledge base. But the most people, they start using mushrooms either for touristic reasons, because they're curious, they want to try it, or because they have psychological problems. And they do this in the idea, romantic or not, that it's going to help them, or because the psychiatrist helps them with that, or with microdosing. These kind of things are all really very relevant. It is contaminated with the fact that they do not have a cultural background in which that's being used. When you look at the native people from the Americas, the first people, you see that they use mushrooms. They use this in a context which is culturally colored. It gives direction to the experience and what you can experience, what you cannot experience. Every culture does that thing to a human being. If you are savage in your culture, you are anti-culture or whatever kind of things, you are at that moment going against the grain of your culture. So if you do something that is supposed to have a particular kind of effect in your culture, you'll automatically revolt against that. So if you take a drug as part of a particular kind of culture that uses that drug to get a particular kind of experience, you will go against it, and then you will get something else that is intended in that culture. And don't mind me saying that, but that is the reality. They are getting stuck into a particular kind of worldview, and that is an addiction. And it's also for Daoism, Buddhism, Christianity. These are addictions. They shape your reality, and that is not necessarily bad. There is a very high level of dependency in a drug-based culture, like our modern culture, because of its abuse of medication, of painkillers, of opiates. We are very much a dependency-based culture. We have famous deaths as a result of that, like Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, icons of our culture who have died because of the effects of medication. When you look at all these kind of things, it has to be very clear that when you take a drug and you don't have a underlying culture in which that drug is actually useful, the drug is going to be something of a touristic thing and maybe even destructive. Even when taken within the context of therapy, there is going to be a particular kind of effect, but from research as being published in Nature and other magazines, there is also a habituation in it. When you frequently use a particular kind of drug, you become habituated to it, you become addicted to it. That's a very nice word for being addicted. And that means that after you use it, you're going to go through sort of a downer period and you start to develop craving. And if you are not very strong, you're going to give in to the craving, and as a result that you're going to take more of it. And because of giving into it, the actual originally experienced effect from the drug, which was experienced as uplifting, is going to gradually disappear. It's the same like when you smoke cigarettes, or when you eat chocolate, or when you drink coffee, or when you drink alcohol, or when you have a lot of sex. In the beginning it's amazing, but after some time it becomes more like a drug in a negative sense. So that means that you become addicted. And that is a very important aspect of it. And meditation actually it is the same. At a certain point I was talking with Kalu Rinpoche, one of my teachers, and when the old one, not a young one, but the old one, when I was talking with him, he said, like, look, meditation is what is called a positive addiction. It cannot be denied that meditation is addictive. But the thing is that because of the nature of meditation, you are going to be addicted to something that is going to be constructive to society and to yourself and to your family and the people around you. You are becoming part of a worldview that is aimed at supporting the people around you. And not in a small scale, but in a large scale. When you addict people to a drug, there is substance addiction, and substance addiction is something different. Although it can feel great, it is not exactly the same. A major thing, for instance, when people talk about mushrooms and stuff like this, is that they feel like a door is opening. But the thing is that in the forcefulness of any kind of medicine or drug, it is that if a door opens here, another one closes there. So you're either in the trip or you are not in the trip. And you cannot be in both at the same time. You cannot have part of you open to the trip and part of you in reality. What happens is the more you are in the trip, the less you are in reality as it is normally unfolding around you and where you need to do particular kind of things. Even with microdosing, yes, you can function in general in daily life, but it's a little bit like if you're slightly tipsy from drinking too much beer or drinking some beer, not too much. Your driving quality is going to be affected, but also your decision making is going to be affected, and there is going to be a risk when you do anything in normal life. You do not have the attention that you're supposed to have. This is clear from all the different researchers, both the paper researchers as well as for people who do microdosing and report on that on YouTube or other channels. When doing meditation, you do something else. And when you are doing meditation, you are learning to open that door while holding that door not only open, but also to be fully there. The point is that I sit here, I meditate. While I'm sitting here, I'm talking to you and I'm meditating, and I'm in that spiritual realm, so to say, at the same time while I'm also in my daily realm. This is a very specific aspect that is elementary for Daoist, but also for Tantric Buddhist practices. Let's just stick to these, because these ones I know the best. When you are in this double realm, yes, sure, at a certain point you might go more deep into that one because of the experience, or you might be a little bit more in the daily realm, but you can do both, and you're basically splitting off your brain, your mind, your heart into two parts, where one is 100% in reality, this reality that you now see, or in that meditative reality, there is also 100%. So your awareness has grown twice, and you learn how to both split it and merge it at the same time. It is not like I'm sitting here and there's all kind of gods or spirits around me, but there is a part of me that keeps them alive within my own body and my own mind and my perception of myself, in whatever form that then takes within the meditations. So that is very specific for what you want to achieve in meditation. Your meditation is about being in all places at the same time. While in mushrooms, LSD, ayahuasca, mescaline, you are in one place at the same time, not in all places at the same time. You might have the feeling that you are a bit, but in reality the control over it becomes more when you use it more, but that means that you're always going to be only partly here or there. But that is part of the practical aspects of these kind of things. Then there is the other thing. Mushrooms, they are part of our biology in the sense that we share a common ancestor between the mushrooms and ourselves. Mushrooms are more similar to animals than they are to plants, although they are something different from both animals and plants. As mushrooms, they are in a way, they are parasitic, and they live in a different realm than we do. We have to eat and breathe, we have to bring two components together to be able to live our life. Plants, they live by means of photosynthesis, so they absorb light and they turn that into the base substance on which they live. But mushrooms, they are grazing, you can say. They are processing the things that they live on, and they are mining the stuff for the substances that they need to absorb, and they absorb them in their body. You can see that mycelium lives between the roots of trees in forests, and what it does is it transports substances from one tree to the next, and it takes a little bit from it, but it also roots itself already in the tree in case it's going to die, or even if it's not going to die, it is going to already grow and spread itself through the tree, preparing the tree basically for its death, because then the mycelium is going to eat it. So that means that the mycelium is farming the trees. And these are myceliums which are really very widely outstretched, and they can encompass a whole forest. And then there's different kind of mycelium together, because in one forest you can see many different kind of mushrooms. There's not one kind of mushroom. And these myceliums, they spread, and their sexual organs, they're growing out every now and then, spreading to create new bodies, while at the same time also having their own body, and maybe these bodies merge and they mingle, and whatever they do, it doesn't really matter. We know that the neurotransmitters of these myceliums, the hormones that are playing a role in there, they interfere with the hormones and the neurotransmitters from trees, because we know from trees that their brain functions are in their roots, and the mycelium is one big brain function, you can say. And like us, they have a very similar kind of, all three of us, we have a similar kind of awareness building through the mycelium in our brain, you can say, our cortex, where we structure reality and where we bring our sense impressions together to realize where we are, what we are. So it doesn't mean that we can understand mushrooms, but mushrooms as a substance, they create different kind of toxins through which they live. These toxins, when they enter our body, they are going to be having an effect on our body through which we start hallucinating. These hallucinations are either auditory, or they are visual, or they are both, or they are olfactory, or they can be in touch, all kind of things. You see that with a lot of different kind of drugs that people use. They are playing with our senses, and as a result of playing with our senses, we are having fun, or we having a spiritual experience, or we are one way or the other anyway affected. There are two basic forms of hallucinogens in mushrooms, and one is the psilocybin, which is present in many different kind of mushrooms, and the other one, muscimol, or ibotenic acid toxidrome, and that is reacting on the GABA system of our body, while psilocybin is much more reacting on our neural and hormonal system in another way, more on our cortexes. When we look at these toxins, there is a whole list. That's why I was for a moment looking. A whole list of risks that you can find on famous websites for this, because there's a lot of promotion for intoxication through mushrooms, but there are also certain kind of risks. For instance, you can have myocardial infection, you can have renal failure, you can have I can't read my own stuff. You can also have paranoid psychosis, and you can have even depression resulting into attempts to suicides, which might or might not succeed. These kind of things are not without risks. My experience with first people use of mescaline, or with ayahuasca and so on, this kind of things, they were more in a traditional setting, and as a result of that, they were a little bit more directed towards what they were for. But I was pre-trained because of my Daoist and my Buddhist training, my tantric training, and as a result of that, my mind was already looking for a particular kind of thing. And for instance, ayahuasca was like confronting with my Daoist training, because my Daoist training is towards independence, while ayahuasca is towards dependencies, and these things, they fight with each other. And then the durability of the toxic possession of your body by the drug is such a long time that it really took me a long time to take over the control over the drug again, because it is a very powerful, very strong drug, and it is really overwriting a lot of your systems, and I really had to overwrite the drugs itself. And when you are taking it and it feels good for you because you have not enough experience with something else that is relatively equally strong or gives you control, then you don't really notice how strong it is. When I look at Daoist meditation, it has a strong hallucinogenic effect. If I compare it with tantric Buddhist meditation, they use the ability to be hallucinogenic to create what is called dharmanakaya, and as a result of that, bring your meditation alive and feel like when you do, for instance, Avalokiteshvara meditation, or Chenrezig as the Tibetans call it, that it feels like you are becoming the embodiment of Chenrezig, and as a result that develop particular kind of insights. So that hallucinogenic effect is then used to teach you about things like compassion, seeing suffering, and so on. As an experience, it's great. I remember doing that for a long time, very intensively, walking through a forest and seeing all the living beings suffering, and it requires a particular kind of mind to see that and not to go suffer again yourself also. And as a result of that, you learn to free yourself from suffering also because of that thing. So in that sense, meditations like that, they are having a very strong curative aspect, and that is what is usually called spiritual liberation. When you look at Daoist prayers, You see that the prayers, they are very highly meditative, and when you do the meditations every day, you do the prayers every day, you do all the different kind of meditations that relate to that establishment of sacred space, then at that moment you are going to have the same Dharmakaya effect, and everything comes alive and you feel that you live in that thing. Like mushrooms are being seen as enhancing the neuroplasticity of your brain and your nervous system, meditations do the same. They create connections between the different brain parts, cortexes, and your senses, and it makes you experience things that are not really there, or that are really there in a spiritual sense. And the means to do that in Daoist meditation is through the link body practice, where you come to understand this connective neural self-experience at the foundation of meditation. When you do Dantian meditation, just a basic meditation that you begin with. In the beginning, you know, you're already very happy if you can experience your Dantian. That is the beginning of a hallucinogenic process. When you do this very often, very long, very intense, then at a certain point you start noticing, because of the activity of the yang inside the body, you have all kind of auditory and visual and olfactory hallucinations inside your body too, and you start seeing things differently in the space around you. You have to meditate with your eyes open. If you meditate with your eyes closed, you only see the interior and you see only half of the effect. You start at a certain point see the inner luminosity of your body. That's the point of the meditation, and that is the foundation for many other meditations, because once you have achieved that effect, then at that moment you are going to go to the next stage, and you are going to step into the world of wonder, so to say. So the Daoist Disneyland of ghosts, gods, fairies, immortals, and you are going to make them part of your life. So you can see that these kind of practices, they are there to help you establish yourself in that reality. A lot of the feelings that people have during Qigong or meditation, they are the projection of their relative culturelessness. And you see a lot of people, they get lost in that world of spirituality, where what they read or what they hear about becomes reality. And that is also what is part of the current global dilemma that we experience. There is no real culture. We're all reverted to a form of spiritual barbarism, and we continuously create our own reality. And because of creating our own reality, we are living continuously in a nightmare. We don't live in a trip. And that is actually what is one of the essences of Taoism. It says, as a principle of religion, it says every religion has to have an offer of salvation out of that nightmare. They call the world of dirt and dust, because of the pain and suffering people experience, because of the falsifications of their mind, and the disappointment they fall into when they grow older and when they grow sick, and their body doesn't do what they want, and their mind doesn't do what they want, and their emotions don't do what they want, because they're continuously being dragged into that actual negativity of the unpredictability of the experience. And before you know it, you believe these things too, because you grow with your thoughts and your sayings. And instead of moving more and more towards the purposes of your practice, you are moving away from it, and you are basically putting it into small boxes where they become meaningless. And as a teacher, of course, and as a therapist, you always struggle with that too. When you are a drug addict, you have no choice. So you're only being dragged forward by your experiences. At the moment when you are part of a meditative tradition, you are being asked to go into the direction of that meditative tradition. So you have to become the goals of that tradition. That's a very big difference between mushrooms and meditation. Meditation is just not for dealing with your stress. So now I can start taking things apart again, because I am ready with this topic, and I am having to thank you very much for watching this video and listening to what I have to say. I hope it is going to be useful to you, and if you want, you can help me by spreading the message of this video. If you are really interested, join our healthcare project and become a patron, support us, or start doing some of the practice, join our weekly classes, do the healthbuilder challenge, where there's also the dantian meditation in there to help you get into that kind of state that we are just talking about. The world is crazy.